Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's been a minute since I've done a painting video, but I've been plugging away at these blood angels for a while now. I was going to sit down and edit a video the other day and then realised I'd managed to delete half of the footage for the painting guide, so I dug out this limited edition Sergeant Jovan. And I've painted him up as a blood angel to go in with this little force that I am going to be giving away. Details for that and the things you got to do to enter are going to be in the description. So yeah, with the new Blood Angels release, I thought it would be a perfect time to put this video out and give away this army. So yeah, click the link below and check that out. In this force, you're going to get 1 Captain in Terminator armour, 5 Terminators, 5 Infernus Marines, and the limited edition, and quite old now, Sergeant Jovan, that you can use as a veteran sergeant. Now, I've done this in a way that you do not need an airbrush for any of this. I started off the model with a black rattle can base coat and then a zenithal highlight from the top with a grey rattle can, just so you get a little more transition when you're applying the colours. The first paint I use is Bile Red, and I cover the whole model in that, fairly well watered down, so you do get some of the black showing through in certain places, but that's going to allow you to build up some texture over time. What I'm using is I'm using dry brushes and I'm using the stippling motion, because that adds a really nice layer of texture when you are painting these models. I then use a mix, about 50-50, of Bile Red and Evil Sun Scarlet to then hit more of the raised areas, less than I covered previously, trying to hit the majority of the areas from the top half of the model where that light is going to be picked up from that light source. I then do the same thing again, but hitting less of the model from the top down again with pure Evil Sun Scarlet, again watered down. After this, and allowing the paint to dry, I mix Evil Sun Scarlet and Troll Slayer Orange for the final highlights, and on this area I am literally just applying these paints to the top areas of the armor, the tops of the backpack, the tops of the helmets, any areas that are going to pick up that light and aren't going to be in shadow. If you think that this is too bright, then stop a step early. If you want to push it a little bit more, add a little more of the Troll Slayer Orange just to those tiny top points where that light is going to be picked up. After that, it's a case of blocking out the rest of the colours. So I go through using a black. I'm using the Duncan Rhodes 2 Thin Coats Black, which is a very nice black, really nice coverage, and I really liked using it. Shout out to Rock Minis for hooking us up with some of those paints. For the holsters, I am using Dryad Bark from Citadel. I then use Cadian Flesh Tone, the base coat on Jovan's face. For the metal parts, your chainsword, any other bits and pieces, I'm using Vallejo's gunmetal. And then for the start of the gold, for his Aquila on his chest plate and his helmet, I'm using, again, Duncan Rhodes Spartan bronze for that, which I will then highlight up with a gold later. I've also used for the orc head and orc body, for the flesh, I've used wild green from Citadel base colour. And for the hair and for the tabard and the purity seals, I've used Citadel's Morghast bone base colour there, which is going to be really nice to build up from. After this, and you've got to trust me on this and trust the process, I then cover the entire model in MIG's dark wash. It's an enamel paint. It won't interrupt if you give it a good amount of time and you're not aggressive with the next step. It won't interrupt the paint below it because it doesn't mix with the acrylics. Cover the model in it. You can put this through an airbrush. It does go quite well through an airbrush, but I've painted it on, and you want to let the enamel do its thing and run to the bottom of the model, and it's going to sit and it's going to pull in the shadows and in the recesses and give you a really nice contrast between that red and between the rest of the models where you're going to pick up dirt and grime, etc, etc. Now, this isn't proper grimdark painting, and that is something that I'm going to be looking into trying my hand at in the future and putting videos out on it. But this is a really nice way to get a quick tabletop ready army that looks battered and worn out and it's been fighting for a long time, and the level of detail and the level of contrast you get, I can't fault it. I absolutely adore it. You can use a hairdryer to dry this, so do make sure that if it is really wet, you're not spraying enamel wash all over your bedroom or wherever your hairdryer is, or you can just let it dry overnight. Once it's dry, get yourself some mineral spirits and some Q-tips. What you want to do is the raised areas and the areas that are going to hit the most light, you want to remove and wick off that enamel. The mineral spirits will reactivate that and it will allow you to move it. So using Q-tips is a nice, easy way of doing it, but you can also use little makeup sponges, which you can get from Amazon for really cheap, and just remove as much or as little as you want, depending on the depth that you want to get and how battered and worn and battle-torn these soldiers are. And this is what he looks like cleaned up, and I really like that effect. Now, again, if you did want to push those highlights and you think that he's a little too dark, then you can push the highlights on top of that, but just make sure you're not pushing it too far and it kind of stands out a little too much. This kind of wash is going to really tie everything you've done in with the model. Now, rather than doing your traditional edge highlighting and again kind of leaning into that battle-worn look, I've gone back with the gunmetal from Vallejo, and I'm roughly edge highlighting the areas that are going to get battered, so your joints, any areas around where you get battle damage with that gunmetal colour. I then go back to the gold, and using the glistening gold from Duncan Rhodes 2 Thin Coats, I then highlight the areas that are going to hit that light a little more, and it really brings a nice pop where it sits on top of that Spartan bronze with the enamel sitting in those recesses. Going back to the holsters, I use Scrag Brown from Citadel to really roughly highlight to simulate the fact that the leather is going to be worn, and again tying into that battle damage look. Then going back to the face, I use a highlight fairly watered down of Kislev flesh. Now I wasn't happy with this, so I watered down a mix of Reichland flesh shade and water, applied that over to tie it all together, and then reapplied that Kislev flesh, because flesh is something that I really need to work on, and I really wasn't happy with the face. Moving on to the purity seals and the tabard on the front, I've highlighted those up. We use Shabti Bone, and for the hair I used the Citadel contrast paint Iandan Yellow, as all Blood Angels are blonde by all accounts. Correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah, that's about it. I used the gunmetal to kind of highlight the Orc's shoulder pad, and then highlight any of those metal bits again that have been covered with the wash, like the chainsword, and do rough edge highlights on those as well. The final thing to tie this guy in with the rest of the army, to lean more into that battle damage look, is using MiG's North Africa Dust pigment and applying that fairly liberally across the bottom parts of his armor, where as he's been marching through this battlefield, this dirt's going to get kicked up. Try and keep it out of the gaps where those joints are going to be moving, because they're not going to hold a whole lot of dust. But you can roughly brush this off, and if it is too heavy, you can always remove it again with some mineral spirits. For the basing, I use Geek Gaming Scenics fast drying base glue, and then I used their base ready mix, which is Mediterranean soil. So it's a mix of ballast, it's a mix of flocks, and it just ties it in, and it's a really nice quick way of basing. So yeah, what do you think? Really nice, quick and fairly easy way to get a very effective Space Marine force, or any other kind of armoured forces using this technique, or any force for that matter. This guy, I painted him on stream in about 2 hours with an awful lot of waffling, forgetting paints, trying to find other bits and pieces, and I think if I'd have just sat down and painted him, I probably could have knocked him out in about an hour. Obviously he hasn't got his helmet on, so you're going to need a little more detail with that, but for a normal Space Marine you can probably do this, not including the drying time of the enamels, in about half an hour. Though using a hairbrush, it does dry fairly quickly, and if you do bang that wash through an airbrush as well, because it's kind of atomized, it is going to dry a little quicker, and the coverage is going to be a lot more even. So yeah, if you want to win this army, then click on the link below, check that out. I do hope you really enjoyed this. I hope this was a useful, nice, quick, battle-ready army for you guys to take onto the field and go and fight against your mates, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace!